Okay, we're good, Greg.
Okay, I'll call this meeting to order and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. First time of business is the approval of the minutes of the regular board meeting of July 13th. Anybody have any corrections that need to be made?
Move to approve the minutes of the July 15th meeting.
Second.
Been properly moved and seconded to approve the minutes of the regular board meeting, July 13th. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed. Motion passes. Next item of business is the approval of the general fund vouchers, 779.39 through 779.78, voiding 776.95, and wire transfers 2021 triple lot 1 through 2021 double lot 44.
Move to approve.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded to approve the general fund vouchers as read. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed. Motion passes. The next item of business is the public comments section. Nobody is here from the public. Move on to the new business. Item A, review of reopening COVID-19 response.
Okay, so we have, we're going to kind of do two things. We're just going to review what's been happening, some things to come, and then that first agenda item, or the second agenda item is the actual district reopening plan. So these are just kind of the pieces that have gone into the planning. So some of it on document. It won't go through it all, but here's, just wanted to touch the graduation. You guys were there. Appreciate you guys coming and supporting and being a part of it. I thought it was really, considering all of the stuff that led up to it and the disappointment and then planning and then more disappointment for the kids. I thought overall it really was a neat ceremony and got a lot of positive feedback, a ton of input and help. I want to thank Mrs. Hughes, Mrs. Kaler, Mr. Wallace, Mr. Rosine, Mr. Gillis,
Custodial crew.
the whole custodial crew coming in and helping out. Who am I missing? Anybody else? Bo, yeah. Don't want to forget Bo. He was awesome. So it was just really a collaborative effort to get that evening set up, and there was a lot of planning that took place and preparing for it. And I thought it was a really neat ceremony. I was really happy, and I think the parents liked it. I thought the kids really liked it, and thankfully the weather held off for us. So that was finally nice to say that we have the 2020 graduation ceremony in the books. So just wanted to mention those individuals that were part of that. The second thing that I want to talk about is open house. So you guys have been aware that I've been meeting with Polk County Soup. So we've been working with the county along with working with the district to try to figure out what everybody's doing to try to align with the surrounding districts in Polk County. The open house at the elementary is kind of the most recent a change in the what we had originally planned for the open house. So I'll let Mr. Peterson talk to that as far as what our plan for the elementary open house.
Yeah, so we've done 3 years now, and I think a lot of you are familiar as having elementary kids go through. We've had our open house the way we've done it in person on that first day of school. With COVID-19, what we've been planning on, and I got some nice feedback from the teachers with the teacher meetings we've been having the last month. But what we're hoping to do is take the day and basically double it, have 2 open house days, and then offer to have parents come and split them up by alphabet. So basically be breaking the parents into 4 parts to distribute out the crowd more and just even things out a little bit, do a little bit more of a schedule, make things a little more scheduled and stuff just to keep the crowd evened out. So that's the plan we were kind of rolling with. Still going to do pictures, stuff like that. And then was, I think, Thursday afternoon, later in the day, Mr. Ernst let me know about just some developments just around the county. But just the idea of having all those parents come in the building, even divided up like that the day before, it just wasn't really finding out that basically to the rest of pretty much the rest of the schools around the county are also opting not to have in-person open houses either. And so Mr. Ernst got some more feedback from superintendents in Polk County. So tentatively now we're trying to do, and this is just all figuring out as we go here, but some sort of a virtual open house. We have an in-person option just for the junior kindergartners and the kindergartners. So those youngest first learners coming in, give them a chance to come in person. Do it in some kind of a scheduled manner where, again, we can control the crowd sizes and stuff, so have people schedule when they come in. So JK and K, as well as any students who are brand new to the district or brand new to the school, allow them to come in for the open house in person by appointment. And then also specific students who have special needs who maybe would really benefit. So, and that would be more dictated by, just a small number of students, but dictated by their special ed teachers. They would know those students that would really benefit to have certain students come in and have that opportunity to have the open house experience. And then otherwise, we're thinking that we would offer virtual meetings, so the teachers would still have those same extended hours, like the 10 to 5:30 period of time, and then we would offer the same schedule so that, like, say, 5th grade or 3rd grade, they're offering a meeting at this time, but instead of having parents come in person, if they're interested, they could sign up, they get a Zoom link or a Google Meet link, and they could still interact with the teacher and hear a short presentation if they wanted to. Or if a parent wanted to have an individual conference, we could offer that up, and the teacher would have that day to set up a time where they could talk with a parent who needed to talk with them ahead of time. So that's what we're thinking. The concern, though, is, we still, it's such a great thing about that day, getting all the forms done, getting the pictures done, getting all the school supplies dropped off. You guys know as parents all the stuff the kids bring in. So that's still a concern, it's a big loss to not have that opportunity. So we've still got a lot of things to figure out, but we're open to ideas and we're brainstorming things right now. But that's the current plan as it sits right now. So then September 1st would be the open house, virtual open house, and then September 2nd they would come to school like their normal first day. So, any questions or ideas or?
I threw Mr. Peterson's letter in there too for you if you wanted to reference for the details in there. And this has been it's been exhausting. I mean, it really has to go through. Even this, it'd be so much easier from our end. Anybody that chooses to listen to this too, that it'd be so much easier to just say, let's just move forward with the open house, because just the let's offer a virtual house. And we're how many weeks before the school year? I mean, there's just a lot of planning and preparation that just goes into trying to make that happen and kind of cross all your T's and dot all your I's. So it's definitely been a roller coaster of a ride from our end of things too. So hopefully we will be offering something virtual as recommended by the county, and then we'll have some, like Mr. Peterson said, some individual students that are coming into the building.
So Josh, if I
Yep.
could just ask now, it would be so much easier just to have an open house. So I'm sure you guys have had these conversations, but I'd just be interested in hearing how they went. Now, when you have our open house, population of the school never does get above a normal day of school, right?
Right.
So then why do they have
Well, the student but the parents would, if there's multiple parents in for each child, then it's going to go.
yeah, but
well.
that's spread throughout, isn't that usually spread throughout a day?
Yeah, I think the concern would just be, there's a kind of a crowd in the lobby, kind of a crowd in the commons, during pictures and stuff, and we had plans to try to spread everybody out more and everything, but I think they're just concerned with, the crowding and the congregating of people in the commons, in the hallway, in the gym, whatever. And I think too, just to have that amount of people coming into the building right before school starts, the cleaning and everything that would need, part of our plan once the school year starts is to not have parents and visitors coming inside the building. And I guess, here we would be the day before having all these parents and visitors coming inside the building. And I think that's what's driving it.
Yeah, the two kind of main things that were communicated to me were, you go from 300 to now, if you have two parents, you're looking at 900 people that are coming into the building. And the sanitation of, having that control over what everybody's touching and trying to get that clean, and just heightens the exposure rate. And then and that was kind of the main thing, having everybody not being able to clean everything appropriately or effectively, I guess, is what was communicated to us. So,
And if we give you different guidance in the meantime, by all means,
Yeah.
I want to go back to the
Well,
in-person.
but that's why I kind of question this, is because they're gonna have a little bit of pushback on everything that we want to do going forward. So why not push them a little bit? If we want to have first off, having these visitors come, all them germs are in the kids anyway. But if we're gonna, if you tell me that we're gonna have more of a population during that time, if we can't spread them out enough, than a normal school day, then I don't think it makes any sense. And I want you guys to know from my standpoint, and I don't know how you guys stand on this, that go ahead and run the school the way that you want to.
Yeah. We appreciate it.
That's all I got to say about it.
One other thing that they did, they said too, you know, that the risk of the open house, like, and Mr. Peterson mentioned it, but you know, having an outbreak right before you even get the doors open was kind of, I think, one of the main thoughts too of why do an open house, you know, right before you open the doors with everyone and run the risk of having to shut it down before the year even starts. So, right or wrong, I don't know, but that was their recommendation, and they've been really good to work with. You know, not every school is doing exactly the same thing, but you know, they've had some changes in personnel as well at the county level, so it's been interesting on that end too, just you know, navigating that. But that's the game plan right now, is a virtual open house. And then at the junior senior high, we're doing something different. Right now, this is still a go, just because parents aren't involved in this one, but we're doing a staggered start. The second document, or I guess third page, 2 pages after that one, Mr. Gillis's letter, and I'll let Mr. Gillis just kind of share what the plan is for the staggered start at the junior senior high.
I can't claim this is an original idea of mine. We did this in a former district that I was in. We do a staggered start, and what we're looking to accomplish is, you know, kind of ease kids back into their schedule. They've been out for a long time. Have time to work with them on, we gotta do lunches all different and breakfasts all different, and we get a chance to run them through their schedule. It gives us more time to do the class meetings and the handbook and all those kinds of things that we normally do on the first day of school in smaller groups, more spread out groups, so we're able to accommodate all those things. I've got a few staff members helping me with all the different things we can do in creating the schedule. So in the morning, we're looking at probably rotations, 3 rotations of, you know, taking school pictures of paying fees and then class meetings and handbooks, and then handing out devices again. Many people turned their device in last spring, so we have to reissue devices and go through that part of it.
So ID pictures will be that day, or their school
Yeah,
pictures will be that day?
Same.
Oh,
We're gonna print our own IDs this year, and that way we can barcode them, so we can have touchless point of sale at the lunch line and checking out books and things like that. We have the printers in the building. Mrs. Labry is getting up to speed on how all that works. We're gonna do like we always do each year. Cahill's always used last year's pictures, so then the only pictures that we have to take for ID cards will be the onesie, twosie new kids that are joining us this year. So it'll be last year's pictures on this year's ID. It's just faster because then the office can process all those and have them ready to hand them on the first day. So we're gonna do that. I think that's, it's coming together pretty nicely. We're gonna have those rotations then in the morning, and then we're gonna run through a normal schedule. Teachers can do syllabi and talk to their kids and things like that. 7th through 9th graders, they start the year with Camp Junior High on the 25th. That's an all-day event for the junior high kids, especially this year's, or for the 7th graders, because the incoming didn't get their spring come to visit the building kind of orientation thing, and we're kind of putting it all together. Camp Junior High Day, we had a really good turnout last year. I think almost every 7th grader made it, and it was a nice way to get them up to speed and get their stuff in their locker and not worry about, you know, their schedule and things like that. So that's on the 25th, and then so the staggered start, we have grades 10 through 12 on the 1st, and the thinking behind that was several or many of them are drivers, you know, that kind of thing. So rather than start the 7th through 9th graders who don't drive and then are stuck at home for a day and then come back on Thursday, we started with the 10th through 12th graders. And then on the second day, 7th through 9, and all new students who come in, and we'll run them through the day, get their schedules out to them, get pictures taken, and all the class meetings and things, and then run them through the afternoon. We'll have a shortened class schedule again, and hopefully we can have a longer wrap period at the end of the day, so then we can kind of, all the staff members can help wrap up any questions and answers about, you know, what's lunch gonna look like, or things that are still stuck in their head from the day, and then get to know their wrap team and start building relationships there. And then next year when we roll forward, we'll have some version of the staggered start. I'd like to keep that going. I'm not sure if it's gonna look like this. That's another year out yet, but it's just a nice way to get the year started for students and get them off to a good start.
Any questions with the junior, senior high staggered start? Okay, then next we have document, we emailed this out, we're rolling out the virtual learning option. So just for sake of, I guess, consistency as far as the terms we're using, so distance learning is when, if we have a short-term shutdown and we're providing, the classroom teachers are still providing instruction, but they're at home, like a snow day or something like that, would be distance learning. Virtual learning is actually a full 100% online schooling. We've decided on Edgenuity, which is a program, and before I kind of talk about that, I want to thank a couple people too. Mrs. Millar, Mrs. Kaler, Mrs. Kelly, Mrs. Paulson, the admin crew. There was a handful of people that were involved in this process too, because there's so many moving parts right now that we've relied a lot on staff to help us out. Ms. Meyer, who's here, has been a part of a lot of different things, and so we've got to trying to get as much input and really just as much help as we can get from everybody in the district. So there were a handful of people that were involved in this. At the high school level, we did, we have been offering like singleton virtual classes with different programs that we've tried out, and this is the first K-12. And we wanted something consistent, and we talked about, if a family has, even my own situation, I have 4 kids, different building, different grades, so if a parent in a situation like if I were in and doing the virtual, they'd be having to look at different platforms, and we didn't want that. So we wanted one platform for across the board. So we decided on Edgenuity. If you guys were able to look through that, all it looks like a very good program. It's aligned to the standards. What we're going to have doing is we sent out this informational, just kind of an overview, and then we also sent out this FAQ, just frequently asked questions, to try to answer any questions so parents could look at this sheet before calling in the district to see if any of those questions were on there. And then there's an application process. So right now we're giving, once the students are the parents apply and they get accepted into it, they have a 10-day window where they could pop back out and go back into the classroom. But then after that, we want them to remain in the virtual learning platform for a semester. Just for fairness, for the teacher's sake, to be honest, it's tough when you have kids coming in and out, and then in a pandemic situation when we're implementing things and cleaning within the classroom, it would be extremely difficult to have kids bouncing back and forth. So this will be a K-12. It's aligned to the standards. It's 100% online. We gave a couple informational videos that were directly from the Edgenuity program itself. They have a lot of resources that were made available to the parents. Really the only thing that would be done on campus would be the statewide assessments. So any statewide assessments, those kids, we'd have to set up a schedule, and they'd have to come back into the building when we had our state assessments taking place in the buildings. We're asking families, they have until the 21st to fill out the application, so we get a ballpark of how many kids that we'll have in this virtual program, or platform, I should say. And when we initially sent out the survey to ask parents, what the level of interest, we got about 10% that were interested in the virtual learning, which in our case would be about 50 to 60 kids. So that's kind of what we're banking on, not totally knowing, what the impact of the masks and some of the political climate right now, if that's going to impact the numbers or not. But right now, that I think we have about 30 students that have chosen already. So, Mr. Gillis or Mr. Peterson, am I missing anything?
No, I think that's pretty accurate. Our survey, the sign-up survey, we asked parents to rate some different skill sets kids have, communication and independence, working and things like that, and that was part of the survey. So we kind of have an idea of how the parents rank them. We asked if they had any other questions.
are. Right now, we've got 27 signed up.
In your building.
In your building?
12 in
No,
this
district.
building
Total,
right now.
about even,
And
yeah.
is that families or individual students?
Students.
Individuals. We field, I'm sure I've fielded multiple questions, emails and some phone calls, some good questions parents have had, good discussion.
So this, if there is some kind of shutdown for a couple weeks or something, this is not a replacement?
Nope.
It'll go to a distance learning?
Yep, just would be this will not replace that. So if there's a short term, the expectation is that the rigor will be much higher from last year. So teachers will be responsible for continuing to teach and deliver instruction during that time. And if it's like a exposure situation where we have to, where someone was exposed to COVID, we come in, get it cleaned with the guidance of the county, and then get everyone back in. And during that time, the online virtual students will remain on online virtual students. The in-classroom teachers will be distance learning, just doing, communicating either through Seesaw, which we've identified at the younger age, or Google Classroom, and then everything will be communicated or email, through that.
Is there like a magic number that shuts you down? Or?
No, there's no like
Who decides if you're shut down?
the county, and that's been a question from many superintendents asking the county, what's the threshold, is there a magic number, like what would shut us down? Like if we do have an exposure, does that mean the whole district shuts down? And the answer is it really is going to be individual basis, decision with the county. They're going to walk us through that, and it'll depend on the contact tracing and how many people they think were exposed. So for example, if we have, an afternoon JK student, that, tests positive or had some type of exposure, we might just shut down that wing and continue to have the rest of the district still up and running. If it's, maybe someone in 9th grade that, moves throughout the district or throughout the building in this building, we might be forced to shut down, either this entire building or the entire district.
That's up
So-
to you or the county?
That's going to be, the county is saying that they will walk us through that as far as, what they feel like will need to happen. And ultimately, it's their call. If they ultimately have the authority to shut us down, and we also have the authority to shut us down like a snow day. So it will be either one of us, but everything that I've seen has been very collaborative. They've been very good to work with. The Polk County has been really
It'd be
impressive.
like a snow day? What if it happens to be a 10-day period where you gotta not have anybody in here? Then is it like 10 snow days, or does it?
I meant like a snow day I meant just similar to like what we do with a snow day, not.
Right.
Yep.
So it has to be made up?
That I don't know.
You get something.
I don't believe it will be if I had to guess, but I don't know. Right? DPI just released a waiver. So last year they gave us a waiver for 3 things that you guys signed off on. It was civics test, EE, and then instructional minutes. They just released a waiver that's multiple pages long, that the district now just signed. Whatever we want to waive, we have to indicate on all the different things that we would request a waiver for those items. So I don't know, I don't have an answer for that, but my guess is that we will apply for, if that happens, we'd apply for a waiver for instructional minutes
Sure.
and then go through the DPI process.
So they're not telling you, all right, you have a case, you shut down for 2 days, 10 days, they ain't giving,
Nope,
Not specific.
nope, they're not.
As far as I understand, when I went through this thing with one of our employees, you find an employee that's got it, they're automatically, and anybody that's exposed to them is automatically, what's the term?
Quarantine.
Quarantined for 14 days, or 10 days plus 3,
Now it's down to 10 days, I think.
is it? So I expect that would probably be the same thing that we're gonna deal with.
Yeah. So it really depends on the situation. If it's students, or if it's staff, staff's a different ballgame because then it becomes a sub-coverage, coverage issue, not necessarily a quarantine issue. If we have too many subs out and we don't have the coverage, we might be forced to shut down because of that situation, which wouldn't be the county's call. That would be the district's call of, we just don't have the coverage. We also have certain populations, I think we've talked about this briefly before, but our substitute population, our transportation population, like there's certain populations, if we get too many, that have been exposed, we might be forced to shut down even though the rest of our district could run at full capacity. So it really is gonna be a situational thing that we're dealing with. Do you have something?
That's what I was gonna add too, is just that we just talked about staffing concerns, which you hope wouldn't happen, but yeah, we could see a scenario where we've got X number of staff out sick or quarantined, and we don't have the subs to run the building. That's all.
Yeah, and we'll show you another document later, but, one concern too is if other districts close down, with the new laws, which I put a flow chart in there, the Family First Coronavirus something act, response act, that there's language in there where if a school closes down and it's a childcare issue, now those staff members that are in our district but have kids in other districts have a certain amount of days that they're entitled to be out for childcare purposes. And then, so if we have too many of those scenarios too, that potentially could shut us down. And I mean, you could kind of see a domino effect in this whole area with something like that. Yeah, we were all desperately wanting concrete answers for different things too, and there just, unfortunately, there isn't.
So another part of the thing that I learned when we went through this, when they ask you if you've been exposed or not, their criteria is being within 6 feet of somebody for 15 minutes without a mask on. So if we can somehow keep everybody from that criteria.
Yep. And it's 15 cumulative minutes, which is interesting too. Like even when we were walking through like our guidelines, with the county, they said, well, you could have football players potentially, hitting each other and then separating. As long as they don't do it for a cumulative of 15 minutes, you technically can do that, which to me doesn't really make sense. But yeah, that's been a conversation too. Even passing time and the cumulative 15 minutes within the hallways, we've talked about that as well. So I think it's going to be a lot of, as soon as we find out that we're dealing with something, it's going to be immediately calling the county and them walking us through what we need to do. And then what I've said to some of the staff members in some of our meetings, I see it as being a slower version of the snow days, because there's going to be more time to make decisions, unfortunately, because then that means there's potentially more time of exposure. But if a student goes home sick, we might not know if they do have coronavirus. There might be a 24-hour period where we don't hear from the county, and then they tell us, yes, that individual was sick, and then we have to go through our contact tracing and figure out where that student was or that staff member was, and then make decisions based on that. And so that's kind of my, at least the analogy that I share with the staff is I do think it's going to be a slower version of a snow day, kind of decision as far as how the decision making is made, except in collaboration with the county.
But you gotta wait 5 to 7 days to get test results sometimes.
No, it's less than that now.
Half hour.
Yeah, some are, depending on where you go, but
Most of them are within that day. That depends.
Yeah.
I think.
But there's, it's been
Or how slam they are for tests.
So-
Cambridge test was the next day.
any questions with the virtual learning platform that we're using? It's really, when you look at it, it looks user friendly. It really looks like it'll be nice for the
Actually,
parents and
like,
students.
Some people are really considering starting school, but there's no option to get into this if it's after the 24th or 21st of August or something.
We would entertain applications still. Like we termed it as an application process, so we still have the ability to, like if someone wanted to explore this after that date and they applied, we would look at the circumstances and talk to the counselors, and then the admin team would, meet and decide whether or not it would be a good fit or not.
You got a plan too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the thought behind the date was we got to come up with like what we're doing with this and have someone responsible for it and kind of in charge of it, and so we needed to know.
But that is gonna be kind of a deadline then if you're gonna decide to do this? Because what if there happens to be on the first day of school, we're shut down for the first week? We can't come back. You won't be able to go into that?
No, so if we feel like it's going to be a long-term shutdown, we're going to cap it immediately. Because if we had every student enroll in this, it cost us over, I think it was like $1.6 million. Which we don't want to lose the kids because we get, a certain amount of state aid per student, so we'd lose more money if we lost all those students. But that 1.5 million, we don't have that budgeted for students enrolling into the virtual school. So we would, depending on the situation, if the state came in like what happened last year and said, no, we're all closed, we'd probably cap it at immediately where it's at. Everybody that wasn't enrolled in that would continue with the distance learning, and everybody that was in that, all students that were signed up and already in the virtual learning would continue with the virtual learning.
Should be a similar education, really, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
You're
that's,
stepping it up, aren't you, for this year? I mean,
yeah, the
virtual
expectations,
higher than it was in the spring.
for students and staff. We're in the process of creating some documents. I think we're even going to call them handbooks, but documents have some expectations for students and staff during the even short-term or extended closure periods.
But the virtual learning kids are still considered all Clear Lake students?
Yep,
Or
yep.
Do they have everything else, like, if
Yep,
they're in a
that's-
sport, they can do that?
That's all in that.
Technically, yep.
frequently
Oh,
asked
yeah.
questions.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
That's why we're doing the semester piece as well, because in high school, you're earning credits towards graduation. And
Right.
that happens by the semester, so they need a semester commitment at a time, so they're earning the same
Oh, yeah.
amount of credits as they go through.
So we have somewhere in some place limits for the teachers to be able to contact students directly without someone else being involved in that conversation. What's that called? What policy do we call that? Do we need to change and manipulate that a little bit so they don't have to have their hands tied in trying to do their job if we do get to a place where we're not having school in session?
You're talking like, not having like one-to-one communications over digital media and stuff like that?
Right.
Yeah.
Or is there a platform that they can use that would provide
Yeah.
some type of?
Well, they can
whatever?
use like Seesaw or whatever,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're purchasing Seesaw this year too, which gives us a couple more pieces to that platform. Last year we used Seesaw and Dojo, and then it's K3, Mr. Peterson, or K2?
K2.
K2.
Pre-K2.
Pre-K2. Decided on using Seesaw as a whole across the board, so we didn't have two different platforms going on at the same time. Communication can be used in that, Google Classroom as well, the Google Meet, and then the Zoom meetings. We did last year have, like at the junior high, like they offered some study halls, and we just said, let's have two staff in there, just in the event that there's only one student, for your own sake, to cover yourselves. So I do feel like there's not a ton of scenarios where that would happen, and if there is a one-to-one, then we'd ask that there's more than one staff member in there, and that seemed to work out well with the junior high study halls.
And we kind of had conflicting guidance too last spring, so we were sharing that with our
Yeah.
teachers and saying, hey, don't have a one-to-one online conversation. And then there was more information put out, like, well, you can record the conversation on Zoom, so then you're covered if there's any allegation of impropriety or anything, So it was kind of conflicting guidance. I know Marcy got different guidance at CSUP through the libraries, so, I think it's getting clearer that as long as you can provide some kind of supervision of recording or have another person present.
Yeah.
But there is something there somewhere in the policy though, yeah.
Yep, might be in the hand.
Just to make sure that their hands aren't tied, I could imagine.
Sure. All right, any questions with the virtual learning? No? Okay, all right, now, the return to work letter. So I included my letter that I just recently sent out. Right after the virtual FAQs, I have the letter that I sent to all teachers. The intention behind this letter was to just get a grid for who's coming back. I haven't been receiving any emails or any calls, but obviously you've probably seen in surrounding districts, it's been a hot topic, and for the most part, I think everybody's coming back. We've had a couple last-minute resignations, that's on the docket today. But so a couple things with this, where this letter kind of came from, or at least the employee health agreement. So one, let me back up. So the letter, I have the three new laws: the Family First Coronavirus Act, which is the FFCRA, the FMLA, and Wisconsin Family and Medical Leave Act, and then the ADA, WFEA compliance. So there were changes to all of those laws. And then we also, because of the coronavirus, so then we created, the WASB put out the addendum to the employee handbooks, which we'll be going over here in just a little bit. So this letter just gave information on those laws that were changed, and then the employee health agreement, which I included here for you guys too. So it just lays out stuff from, what you're seeing on the CDC. This stuff, all the language is directly from, most of it is from the WASB handbook. And it's really just an agreement saying that staff are comfortable coming back and that they are coming back. And so kind of covers the district, just saying that now they're responsible for checking their own symptoms. So if in the event that something does happen, they know that they're responsible for doing that. It's kind of two philosophies. You can either do it this way, or some are having staff, do temperature checks and stuff actually on once they come to work. Which in our case, we would have had to purchase a lot more thermometers and had different things in place for that. So just kind of felt like this would be the best case scenario. So asking all employees to sign it. And then the return to work exclusion. So even like what you guys were just talking about, the different, hours and days, and I just wish they would either choose hours or days with when you can or can't return. Those are, even when we put this out, it had just changed from 72 hours to 24 hours. So this really just lays out the different scenarios for individuals and when they can come back to work and what they have to do. If they have to get tested, if they've just been exposed but they're not tested, if they're tested but with no symptoms, and then the self-quarantine as well. So then I did put in here the COVID-19 travel recommendations by country. So this just states if any employee or anybody that's working for the district goes to a level 3 or level 4 international travel, that they then have to quarantine themselves for 14 days, and it's an unpaid leave of absence. There was talk, and I know some districts are doing in-country travel, but it was just, I don't know how to do it, as far as what states I feel like it was kind of a moving target too, like identifying the different states and which are hot spots and which aren't. So I just felt like the international travel would be much easier to monitor. All right, then we have the action plan for confirmed COVID-19. So this is where I wish we could have, just a really detailed plan laid out for all of our employees and even for myself and our, the admin team. But realistically, when we are dealing with it, like we were talking, it's really going to come down to we're calling the county and then we're taking their recommendation on what the next steps are. This does talk about just that there will be a communication put out to the district. We do have to be careful. We can't, give any personal information of individuals that have been tested. But then with that said, we also have to do contact tracing. So there will be a component of talking with staff, most likely if it's a student situation, where we are sharing names of students and who they were by and trying to figure out who was actually exposed. County's recommendation is that we all agreed in the county that we'll be giving building level, if there's somebody that tests positive for coronavirus, we'll be releasing information specific to the building, but nothing more than that, saying that we've got a confirmed case at the elementary, and then sharing some information. The county is going to give us a template that they would like us to use as far as communication, that we're all using the same thing. And then internally, we'll have to share in more detail, just because we'll be communicating with the individuals that were involved. And then along with that, we will be working with the county to have the county work with us regarding our custodial crew and what will need to be done in order to clean if we can do it internally, or if we'll have to contract out and have it done, by a different company to come in and clean that. Right now, they're telling us that we can do it internally with our custodial crew, and that we have to wait a certain amount of time and then get our crew in there to clean whatever needs to be cleaned. Any questions with any of those 3 documents? The health agreement, just so you guys are aware, in my letter, I asked for all staff to sign it by August, what was the date I put in there? 14th, maybe? August 14th. That was really just, we kind of looked at, or I looked at the date, how long we would have to post something and get interview process and then start the interview process and identify someone for a position. So I wanted it signed as soon as possible, is really what it boils down to. Okay, so now we have health agreement, return to work, action. Oh, the flow chart. So I'll share with you, so there's links at the bottom of the flow chart. Lori and I really just looked at this poster from the Department of Labor, I think.
Yeah.
And this kind of lays it out too. We'll have to have these posted throughout the district. So we based our flow chart off of this to try to make it as simple as we can. But it wasn't easy to go through, and Lori would read it a couple times, and then I'd read it a couple times, and we'd kind of both look at each other for a while and figure out if it was accurate or not. But got the flow chart listed here. We also sent it to an attorney to have them make sure that it was accurate, so we weren't miscommunicating anything out to the staff. And right now, this kind of gives you the scenarios or the qualifying reasons in that second column, and then what they're kind of entitled to, and for the duration of absence, whether it's paid or not. Really, it's either a full pay or at 2/3 pay, whether or not they have to use their sick leave or not. So ultimately, all of the first 4 scenarios are at 100%. The first 3 scenarios are at 100% rate. The district would have to cover. The employees wouldn't have to use any sick leave or vacation leave for those scenarios. For scenario 4, it's at 2/3 pay, and for up to 2 weeks. I'll let you guys read that, or do you guys have any questions on that? The qualifying reason 5 was the one I was talking about as far as the child care scenario. Makes me a little bit nervous because you can see it's, for 10 weeks of 2/3 pay at the cost of the district. So if we had a staff member out for 10 weeks, obviously we'd be dealing with a pretty interesting scenario as far as sub coverage.
Josh, so before this happened, if an employee got sick with the flu, how many sick days were they entitled to use?
Well, it depends on the individual and how many sick days they have. So the big difference with these laws are that everyone is entitled to, like those first 3 scenarios, 2 weeks. Doesn't matter if you're, what your position is or what. And correct me if I'm wrong, Lori, but everybody is entitled to the 2 weeks paid at full rate of capacity. So it doesn't matter if they've used all of their sick days and they don't have any. Because in a scenario like last year, if that were to happen, if you had a sick family member, they could take the leave, but it would be unpaid if they didn't have any sick days. This scenario, they have, everyone has a 2-week paid leave, and then 10 weeks at 2/3 rate if it's a child care issue.
So we very possibly could have staffing problems.
Yeah.
They can only they only get paid though for 2 weeks. So if they have 4 kids and they're all sick at different points, the 2 weeks is all they get, the 10 days, and then they move into their sick pay, if that's how they want to do it.
So they don't use their sick days up on this scenario?
No, like in scenario 5, a staff member would have the option, they could say, yeah, I want to use my sick leave because maybe they feel like they have multiple kids that might be sick or for whatever reason. Or they could use this, or they want to be paid at the full rate. Or they could flip flop it and be paid at the 2/3 rate. Did I explain that? Right.
Assuming it's not just a limit of 2 weeks, if they're get 2 weeks and someone else then they come back for a week, someone else gets sick, they get another 2 weeks, right?
No,
No,
2 weeks
It's
total.
For
It's
the
2 weeks.
year?
Academic year.
well, till December
31st.
31st.
So they really could get 2 weeks.
2
4
times.
weeks.
2 weeks, 2 times?
No.
Nope.
2 weeks
2
total.
one time.
What if it's after December 31st again?
We
Well,
don't,
We don't
that
know
was
yet.
done as of December
Oh,
31st.
okay.
Oh,
At this point.
Yeah.
okay.
So their second quarantine would be unpaid.
Yep.
Unless they have sick time they want to use.
sure.
Oh,
Yep.
And staff can accumulate sick time over the years, so there are staff who have 60 or 70 sick days accumulated.
So you build a sub if you have a pulse on maybe?
Yeah.
Are you volunteering?
Wonder what, none of this applies though if somebody goes out of country, they can't use sick days for those 2 weeks of quarantine, right?
Correct, yep.
If they have paid sick days, they can't use those either? District sick days?
No, they could use.
They're a teacher anyway because they're only allowed personal days to go on vacation.
Oh,
Yeah.
So it's- teaching staff does not have that option.
right.
Any
You guys have been busy here.
questions?
Yeah.
Yeah. Any questions with this stuff?
That's good.
Okay. In that document, I also put some of the laws in there too, if you're interested. And this was sent to all employees. So they have this flow chart. They're having a couple questions from the flow chart. We're gonna be going over this in service.
Can that change yet, or shouldn't?
The acts, or the laws?
That flow chart?
No, I don't think so. I think the only thing that would change is if there's an additional law passed that would happen, January 1 would be my guess.
Extended or something.
Yeah, if it's extended. So these have been pretty solid, which is nice to work with. Okay.
The biggest problem is once you think you got it,
It changes.
then you deal again.
Yeah.
So our payroll is probably gonna be high this year then.
Yeah, so I was super excited about the CARES Act money until
This came out.
Which we can use this to pay for that.
We can,
Or the
yeah.
80
But,
yeah,
I mean-
use it to pay for
It won't last long.
No, it won't. So, all right, so those are the documents that were recently shared with all employees. So then the next document is you know what? Well, I guess, the addendum to the handbook. Where did that go?
This is a meeting where they used tabs.
Yeah. So these 3 pages, let's do those first. I'm gonna skip down the e-funds. Laura, do you wanna talk about the e-fund that we're gonna be offering?
So the district has used a third-party vendor called eFunds for parents to pay and put money onto a lunch accounts. So they set up an account, they can pay either via their checking account or debit card or credit card. In the past, they have paid the fee to do that. So the district has never had to pay the fee for them to be able to use that service. Due to the corona thing, we want less people in the building, so we are reversing that in that the district is now gonna pay the fee, and we're gonna try and promote the e-funds so people use that to pay their lunch accounts, and they also can pay student registration fees online that way too. Try and get less people in the building.
Would you be able to use that for like student activity costs then?
We can do that for that also, but I don't think there's gonna be much of that this year. But yes, that can also be set up for that also.
So the
Unless they're
parents,
optimistic.
the parents paid it before, it was like $1.
Right.
Right, it was $1 if it came out of your checking account, and it was like $2.65 if you used a credit card. And it's less for us to do that, so like for checking accounts, I think it's only 50 cents for us, for our portion of it now. And the credit card's like 3.2%. So we figured it would be a better deal for parents, get them into it, help them stay out of the building.
And then we thought,
Or
you know,
kids out of our
since we were
offices.
restricting parents from the building and want to promote more online stuff, the district would cover the cost.
Or the kids bringing the money in for the parents, or, you know.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right, so if you turn those 3 pages, the next item is stapled. This is the addendum to the employee handbook. So this is 100% specific to, or was created because of the coronavirus. It's going to be an addendum that's going to be part of the teacher employee handbook, the support staff employee handbook, and the transportation handbook. So really just kind of outlines you know, the different scenarios that we're in, except to, you know, a lot more detailed, you know, what symptoms do staff have to stay out of the building, you know, what do they have to do, how many hours, how many days, you know, those type of restrictions. So just kind of the main points, you know, bullet number 2, you know, what the staff's what the employee's responsibility before arriving to work, you know, and then it kind of outlines that. The next section, upon initial arrival at the work site, which talks about, you know, your monitoring your own symptoms. Temperature screening, which we're not doing, we're just doing the self-screening. Returning to work. And then implementation of prevention practices in the workplace. So kind of expectations within the workplace.
Has anything like this been sent to the parents, Josh, to kind of monitor their kids before they take off for school? And, you know, with the colds and stuff, season coming up and stuff, if you have some kind of a fever, let's just play it safe to try to keep schools open, keep your kids at home.
We have not, I mean, in our school plan, we had said that, you know, if you're sending your child to school, that implies that they have no fever and they don't have any symptoms. But unfortunately, you know, we've seen in the past with the flu season, you know, sometimes parents do send their children to
Just don't
school.
keep them home.
Yeah, you know, when they have symptoms. So that will be tough to navigate, but we're really asking parents to, you know,
So what
really.
happens if you have a kid come in and they have a fever?
So if they have any of the symptoms, we are going to be communicating to the staff that what the CDC is saying and the county is saying is if it's symptoms out of the norm. So like an example I gave, you know, to the teacher, I think it was the elementary crew, if little Harry Aarons gets a bellyache, you know, every time there's a test, you know, there's a good chance that he's got a bellyache because he doesn't want to take the test. So we're asking your professional judgment to, you know, is this out of the norm or out of the character for this child to have one of these symptoms? Obviously a fever is different, but then they'll be sent down. They've recommended that we identify a different room for students with symptoms. So in this building, for example, we have you know, kind of like a storage room that we're putting almost like little army cots in there for students that have symptoms, and then we'll be calling parents to say, you know, please get your son or daughter, and because they have these symptoms, and then depending on the scenario, you know, might be asked to, you know, go get tested. Any questions with the?
So these tests, are these just all at the hospital at this point to get tested? Are you gonna have a box of tests here or not?
No, we don't. Right now, it's just a healthcare provider. So anything that's listed in here, and it even says has to be done by a healthcare provider. I know, like some larger universities are contracting, like with Mayo Clinic, and they're having, but we obviously aren't doing that.
I was just thinking eventually they're gonna keep getting us tests quicker and faster and better, and it'll just like your scenario later, oh, it's been 24 hours and we don't know what the results are, it would just,
Yep.
They've never released the strep test for us to do, so I don't think they're gonna release this
Yeah.
for any citizen to do on their own.
Yeah, they got bills to pay too.
Yeah.
Any questions with the addendum? No? Okay. There is an outside chance that there's going to be a revision of this sent, that they've told us before the school year
Before tomorrow?
starts. So, yeah, which seems to be the theme with everything. But as of right now, these are what we're supposed to be, following. Like I said, WASB attorneys crafted it, and then I also had it once. So the document that they gave us was a large document with different things highlighted, and it was a bunch of stuff in there, and then explaining different things. And then as a district, you go through it and then identify what works for your district. So then after we did that, I sent it to another attorney just to say, does this work for what we're doing? And gave them the health agreement as well, and they said, yep, you're on the right track, that looks good, and gave us a thumbs up. So, but I do see, like, this is the third one that they've put out of this, so they change, and I'll give you just an example, like I think, or maybe I mentioned it, but it was 72 hours, and then it shifted to 24 hours. I thought that was in here. I'm not sure where it's at, but the timeline CDC has been changing, so that's gonna obviously impact that.
All right, Josh, is that the end of item A? Now we're moving to item B.
We have a couple other things. Just want to give you a quick update on the fall sports, and then I'm going to let Mr. Peterson and Mr. Gillis talk about just the building level planning that's been going on. So as of right now, fall sports, the Lakeland Conference, the ADs have met, and then the superintendents have met, and then we've collaborated with our ADs. We developed a Lakeland conference plan. I didn't bring it just because it's the WIA is meeting on August 14th as well, and that might trump everything, and then we'll have a totally different plan. But as of right now, the fall sports will only be competing within conference, within teams from the same conference. So, for example, if cross country's in the Lakeland Conference, they'll only compete against teams in the Lakeland Conference. Right or wrong, it's unfortunate that it wasn't more maybe regional, like an Amory is right next to us, but is what it is. There are going to be some restrictions to spectators. It's not going to be, it's going to be limited to parents, guardians, and immediate family is kind of the thought. And none of these things have any, like, there's been no threshold identified as far as how long we're going to be doing this. How long do we have masks on? Obviously, the student masks will be dictated by the order, but my gut tells me that once the numbers start decreasing in the county, then we'll start having those conversations. That the county will start giving us that information and allow us to make more decisions. So yeah, so it will definitely be different this year if we're able to have fall sports. Right now, it's sounding like we are. As of right now, the last statement that WIA put out kind of implied that fall sports are still going to be a go, and then that we'll have the restrictions at the conference locally. So once the WIA releases their information and we feel like it aligns with the Lakeland Conference, we're going to bring that proposal to the board and make sure that you guys get the final stamp of approval on that too, as far as because that could potentially. Hope it won't, but I think that it could cause some frustration when you're limiting the spectators to your sporting events. So with that said, you guys will get eyes on it and you guys will make that final decision. Okay, so now the last thing is just the 2 building level plannings. We're not going to talk like in detail on anything, but I just wanted each of the guys to share you know, kind of what's been going on and what we've been doing at the building level planning as well. Go ahead.
Well, we met with teams of teachers and worked through some different areas. The finer points, basically a day-to-day operation. For example, hallway passing times, how we're going to manage traffic flow in the building, lunch and breakfast times as kids are coming off the buses, how we're going to manage kids in spaces and keep them apart. So we work through things like that. General classroom conversations about how are we basically restructuring our classrooms to ensure as much space between students as we possibly can within the limitations of our space, taking out any extra furniture, extra cleaning. For example, like in lab settings in the shop or the face room or places like that where there's lots of contact places where people are using things, talking about cleaning protocols within those spaces and what supplies are going to be needed. Talk through small group meetings, like for clubs and organizations. We're going to do our very best to keep our clubs and our student organizations able to meet. We're going to have to look at bigger spaces to hold those meetings and things that we have to do to accommodate those needs. Let's see, I talked about students moving about the building. We're probably going to be allowing backpacks in the building. Lockers are probably only going to be available beginning of the day, end of the day, and then on either side of lunch. So students are going to carry their stuff between classes, able to go to lockers at certain times of the day. Talk through how to work with student absences. Talk through procedures for visitors coming to the building, parents dropping off things in the middle of the day, you know, those kinds of procedures. Talked about staff in their common spaces like the workroom and the lounge and things, wiping down surfaces after you touch the copier, and the microwave, and using the refrigerator, and then having them eat out in their classrooms rather than the big group in the small break room, that kind of space. Lunch and breakfast was a big conversation. You know, we move a lot of students around the building at lunch periods, and to get enough spacing and extra seats, and so the teachers helped develop a schedule. We're pulling some kids off and eating in a different space, and how to manage that. Wrap is going to look different. Normally our 8th grade wrap hour, when students are getting additional support from teachers, we're not going to travel for the first 3 weeks, and because that usually rotates based on the last 2 weeks' grades of what color level they're at, we're going to basically do a reset this fall, hold everybody in their wrap groups for 3 weeks, pull grades then, and see where we're at, and assign color levels. Got some tweaks to do with the transportation yet. We're going to try to stagger bus drop-off times and releasing at the end of the day to the buses, try to have kind of staggered rooms so they're not all coming from the same spaces at the same time. Did I miss anything, Josh, that you want me to talk about as far as those? Staggered start was on there. That's been a lot of planning with staff.
No, that's good.
Yeah, we had a similar process with the elementary staff. So we had them in for a series of meetings, met first time I think it was July 21st. And had really good participation, 15 to 20 people, met again on August 4th, 2 weeks later, and then having a series of meetings this week too. I met with the specialist teachers this morning, some music and art and FIA and library and so on. And then another meeting tomorrow morning with general staff, anybody's invited to come in. So trying to get a lot of staff input and trying to get a lot of brainstorming. Said the power of the group is important to brainstorm things. So that first meeting was a lot of going topic by topic and really throwing out questions and concerns and ideas rather than coming up with a plan. It was more like, okay, what's our list of problems to tackle? And then we kind of had 2 weeks to work on it. Had some staff members that volunteered to assist with that a little bit, and then we came back on Tuesday last week and discussed it some more, kind of shared what we had. So we kind of said that, really there's two goals with that process. One is develop a plan, but also really it's the process of understanding the plan. And so really a lot of the discussions with the staff have been talking about it and really developing a mutual understanding of what it means, So I think that's been important, and that's just a process to go through. So, similar to the high school, we go kind of area by area. We sort of identify areas of the building or of the day, the general school settings and classrooms and small groups and, traveling in the hallways, playground and recess, traveling in the hallway and using the restrooms, drop off and pick up at the elementary. That's a big deal. Food service, breakfast, lunch, snack time. That's all a big deal. Some of the other more highlighted areas, I guess, what to do, how to handle specials, as far as students traveling to specials versus teachers traveling to the classrooms. Sending home technology with elementary students for the first time, So there's just tons. And, I think we've kind of arrived at our vision of what we think everything should look like, but it's like the devil's in the details, now it's like all those finite details of how to make it really work. It's a lot of stuff. It's a lot of things to talk through and work through. So I think that's what we're squarely in the middle of right now. It's all those details. And but I think we've had really great ideas. People brainstorming solutions and thinking of issues and problems that we would have never thought of alone. So it's just great to have a lot of people in the room. I think we had 22 people there the other day, and everybody's very participatory and respectful, and it's been a good process. We talked about our Warrior Way at the elementary school and how the expectations for students around the building. We said, well, we can adopt it call it the COVID way. We're kind of joking, but what are the expectations for the hallway and the bathroom and the classroom now with COVID, as far as hand washing and distancing and all that? It's going to become kind of part of it. So I guess that's been our approach so far.
I've been really encouraged too, because we're dealing with it's obviously a nationwide pandemic, but it's one of the most emotionally and politically charged things I've ever, for sure in the profession of education that I've ever been a part of and dealt with. And all of our meetings have been very positive. They've been very focused on how are we going to make this work? What do we need to do? We've never, swayed from, gotten into the political or emotional piece of it. And everyone's in very different places. There's some real fears in there, and then politically there's, people on both ends of the spectrum, I think, too. And I think all the meetings that we've been having have been very positive and been very productive. At our very first meeting, I think it was I don't want to say funny, but it was interesting to see, everyone was just kind of processing it. I feel like we've been kind of living it, and we've been, all the teachers now can come in and you could see, they were asking a lot of questions about not necessarily, what the plan was, just kind of in general, and then we quickly moved into the planning piece of it. So it's been really good meetings, because they're literally everything that you can think of in a district, this has impacted it. And especially, when you add 600 kids into both buildings, it definitely changes things up when you're talking about a pandemic that's related to health issues. So, and trying to keep things clean. That's hard enough in the JK kindergarten when there's not a pandemic, to make sure everything's clean and every hand is washed. And so it's been very productive. So anyway, just wanted these guys to share with you just that the building level, the planning process has been in the mix, and that we have more meetings to come yet this week. So with that said, kind of transition into the overall district plan. So like I shared in my email, on July 16th, we kind of proposed, kind of finalized the district level plan, and then Governor Evers had an order that's currently in place regarding masks. So that has obviously, created some, emotions from parents, and whether or not they're for or against masks. Either way, we have to comply with the order from the staff level and then the student level as well. So some of the language, if you were able to get in there, is part of the plan. So just kind of wanted to walk through the plan, make sure that you guys were good with it, and then kind of get the final stamp of approval from the board level. So Mr. Gillis and Mr. Peterson, feel free to hop in on any slide, and then if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask questions too. So the purpose of the plan, I'm not going to read every single slide, but we'll go through to just kind of the main slides. The goals, for reopening are pretty straightforward. We want a safe environment for our kids. our goal and hope is that we provide a face-to-face and, instruction for all students. I think that was, collectively everybody's goal. And to provide the best possible educational opportunity for all students regardless of learning format and setting. And that's been tricky too, because you have the pandemic, but then also like at what point does it not become, I don't want to say education anymore, but at what point, where's the balance of making sure that everybody's clean and you're, putting these things in place, but then also providing an education in 2 buildings, like I said, with 600 plus kids and in 2 buildings, it's not easy, so. All right, so planning considerations, obviously the safety of students, staff, and the community is the highest priority in trying to work through that. So again, I'm not gonna go through each and every one. But we did, while we went, we surveyed the families too, and the intent behind that survey wasn't to make a decision based on, what the families gave us, but we wanted to get a pulse for what everybody was feeling and where everyone was at to help, potentially guide some of our decisions while making sure that, we provided a safe and secure environment. Okay. All right, so here's kind of the overview. None of this has changed. We want 5 days a week in person. We've talked about this before, the one-to-one technology deployment at grades K through 12. We talked a little bit about the pre-K to second are going to go Seesaw platform. Everybody else is doing the Google platform. We've started the Google level trainings as well this week. Ms. Meyer and Mr. Crawford are going to be providing trainings for staff members 2 days this week, and then into in-service as well. Devices deployed to home to remote learning where remote learning is required, and then the options A, B, and C, are kind of the three delivery models that we discussed. Okay, so this one's a newly added slide, the operations face covering. So per the order, everyone is required to have a face mask. There are some exemptions to that. We sent out an FAQ to all the staff as far as what those exemptions need to be. From a staff perspective, it's a lot easier. It just has to be a documented disability, and then we provide accommodations for those individuals. For students, we're requiring all students to wear face coverings as well, but we are doing it until the order is done or until another order supersedes that order. So kind of this language gives us the flexibility to say we're requiring all masks on kids with the knowledge that once this is done, then the masks will go back to what we originally said will be encouraged for all students. If there's an order, either if it's overturned or if there's an order that supersedes it and it's extended, then we'll comply with whatever order is given to us. So does that make sense? Did I miss anything on that one, fellas?
Even with students and everything, so if it gets voted down next week, it goes back to what it was before.
Yep, so what we had before is staff are required, students are encouraged.
Right.
So if let's say the order is for some reason overturned tomorrow, which most likely won't happen, but if it is, then our staff are required and students will be just strongly encouraged to wear masks, but won't be a requirement.
Sorry, Josh, I just wanted to ask on the technology deployment.
Yep.
Do we know who has internet at their house and who doesn't?
We have a list of families that didn't have access to it, so we're actually going to be reaching out to 2 churches tomorrow. One of them might be the Grove Church, and ask if we can provide internet for those 2 locations. District pays for it for the year, and then have it similar to the parking lot here, where kids can drive up and then access the internet for free. So Mr. B. Osmond identified the areas that were kind of more and that had populations where would be kind of a struggle to make it to the district and get that free internet. If that doesn't work, we have 2 other locations that that might, or town halls, that might be a possibility as well. So we've already purchased the devices and have them, and they're ready to go up. We just haven't communicated out with the churches yet if that's a possibility. I don't mean to spring that on you, Nettie, but and then we also have 2 town halls that might be a possibility as well.
Is that the best way to do it? So I'm just gonna question that, because if there's a handful, say there's 50 houses that need internet, and that would cost $2,500 a month, you know, at a $50 rate, do we not have the funds to take care of that, or?
Well, we
Because I
think,
can't, if I didn't have it in my house, it sure would be fun to go with my 3 kids to the church parking lot.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because you have to, with my kids, you gotta do it one-on-one, and, you know, you can't do 3 at the same time. And that's just my scenario, but we've talked about this a number of times. Can't we get internet in these kids' houses for the time being, when we need it there?
What happens when somebody goes, I want it in mine too? If you're paying for theirs, why are you paying for mine?
It's not a very big number, I don't think, is it?
no, but even with that, it was, and I'd have to ask Bo exactly, but I know like even getting the hotspots weren't an option, at least initially. I don't know if they are anymore or not.
I talked to another person in another district, they're having the same challenge of, you know, every district in America is trying to track down hotspots, and they are in short supply right now.
Yeah. So we had talked about, you know, we knew hotspots would be tough to do. One, because then do you just try to identify the families that don't have it, and then you just pay for that for the year, which I know districts have had some issues with that. Second option was a bus, you know, park a bus in a certain location and let people access, but then you need someone to drive it. You need someone to be there to make sure it doesn't get vandalized. So we thought trying to identify locations were kind of the best option. I don't think any of them are ideal, but those were the options that we kind of came up with. That you know, when I asked Bo to kind of look into it and say, what should we do?
I'm just wondering what that number is and what the total number per month would be, and my business would be willing to, you know, and I'm sure we're not the only ones to try to keep, you know, our kids going forward to do that. All we need to know is a number, and I'll help raise the funds for it.
Yeah.
You know, I'm sure you guys have enough on your plate, but
But in that, everything's gonna go smoothly. We might not be shut down too, right?
Yeah, I mean, our hope is that they're short-term, you know, closures, and then with that, with Google Classroom, and they can do, obviously the communication can happen, but the assignments can happen offline. Like they don't need to access the actual if they're working on a document. Now, if it's for an extended period of time, then obviously that becomes an issue. And we'd be open to, you know, working with individual families, you know, and then that'd be the plan to, you know, if there was a family that we thought, you know, that we weren't reaching out, that they weren't interacting and engaging in the instruction, we'd reach out to them to see if internet was an issue. And if that were the case, I mean, we'd certainly explore it, but I don't know if we'd even be able to right now with the hotspot option. So that was kind of the next best option that we came up with.
If I'm not mistaken, don't the hotspots run off the cellular phone network anyway? And we have areas of the district that don't have great cell coverage even.
Yeah.
Huh, agreed.
Yeah. So you could give them a hotspot, but if they don't get a good signal, they're still not gonna work.
And they can also, sorry for interrupting, they can also run out of data. So if the family's using it for not school purposes, they can run out, and that kid isn't using it the rest of the month.
Right. But how many, is it 10 houses, or you probably don't know?
We had, I don't know, I had looked up something. Do you guys know the number off the top?
I mean, we have a pretty rough idea based on this past spring and emails, like,
Sure.
you know, when we send out school messengers, you know, we have a pretty good sense of who
Right.
has email, obviously, and then who. And Mona was really, I mean, I think from the elementary, she was all over it this spring, really tracking people down and making phone calls, trying to shrink that list down to 5. So I think, you know, like I said, she has a pretty good handle on how many elementary families probably don't have access.
So it's not as simple as calling Clear Lake telephone and saying, let's get Joe Smith's house set up with internet, and we'll pay the bill.
If it goes by there, there ain't fiber everywhere, I don't think.
Don't have fiber everywhere.
So like during the closure last year, we had just a couple families that we did identify as not, having internet accessibility, so we did hard copies. 2 of them were junior high kids, and we'd have it sent to the family. So we did accommodations that way, rather than trying to do the internet. And the one family had limited access. They'd hotspot their phone, is what they were telling us, a parent's phone. And then they didn't have internet all the time, but they had some time where they could check it, and then we delivered, their homework to the house.
Well, you guys have a plan, I guess. I just wanted to say that, if we're avoiding that option because of cost, I think that would be something that we could overcome, but
Okay.
we'll leave it up to you guys.
All right. Okay, so, any questions with the face covering, the order itself, or the language that we put in there? Does it make sense? Okay. So as you saw, maybe you've seen or not, but we have plexiglass in some of the areas. We have masks for all staff. I think I was telling before the meeting started that I think most staff, they've been showing up with their own masks just because I know, you like a mask a certain way. But we will have masks available if staff or students need them. We're shutting down the drinking fountains and having just water bottles, so we're encouraging families to send water bottles with their kids. We've had we have the sanitation station, so like next to Marcy, we bought a handful of those portable hand sanitizers that will be at every entrance. When kids come in, they'll be asked to wash their hands immediately entering the building. And then with the physical distancing, that's been the toughest piece of this puzzle, to just try to structure it in a way that we can try to do our best to keep kids 6 feet apart. But like I said, we're dealing with 600 plus kids in 2 buildings, and it's not always feasible. Traffic flow, talked about, in both buildings, having kids either restrict them from different areas in the building, or like in this building, have all kids and staff walk one direction rather than crossing paths. So, it might get a few more steps in this year. Students might. We're going to ask staff to be, what's that?
I'm sure they'll have fun with that.
Yeah. Have staff to be even more present out in the building, or out in the hallways, to try to encourage the physical distancing. And then setting up different entrances and exits, within the building, and try to stagger the buses a little bit as well, just so there's not bottlenecking occurring. Healthy environments. We're already doing, different cleaning and disinfecting throughout the building. We have water bottles spray bottles with a solution. We've got rags, and we're gonna have a sanitizing process where the rags get washed and then dried. Where every teacher will have a spray bottle in their classroom with a wipe to wipe down things and try to keep things clean. We're trying to limit shared objects, especially like at the younger age kids, the toys and the classroom materials, scissors, pencils, that type of stuff, have less shared objects and have kids responsible for their own stuff. And so that way there's not, changing of hands. I talked about the symptom room already. Have 2 different rooms identified in both buildings. Is the symptom room where we have kids housed while we're waiting for parents to pick them up if we feel like they have symptoms that align with the COVID. Tracing we talked about, that's going to be really done in collaboration with Polk County. Communication will be going out. We already talked about that. It's going to go out via school messenger. Okay, so this is where like I said, this has been sent out already. But limiting the visitors, we're calling them any non-essential individuals. So there are going to be some visitors into the building. Like just today, I approved. We do have a mental health counselor that families work with. They are going to be coming into the building. They're going to have their own protocols plus our protocols to make sure that they're wearing masks, washing their hands, but then also taking attendance, so in the event that we do have to do contact tracing, that they're accountable for the kids that they work with, and that we would then communicate with them who they had, who the kids were in contact with, those type of things. We've all ed aides, with the exception of 2 ed aides I think we approved and we identified as essential workers. 1 high school student going over to the elementary to help out with the kitchen staff, and then the second one in the main office, maybe?
Yeah.
In the main office. Other than that, the ed aides, we're not going to have movement between buildings. We're going to try to limit that exposure as well. No field trips at this point. We're limiting the gatherings. We're limiting, even the staffing gatherings too. We're not having the lounges are not going to be available to the staff. We're asking that they eat lunch in their classrooms. Transportation has been also an interesting piece to this puzzle, trying to limit the exposure on the buses. We're gonna have family members sitting together first, and then try to do like light cohorts, whether it's grade, classroom, or individuals that interact during the day at some point, kind of cross paths. They would be considered like a cohort. So if we can do that on the bus, we're gonna limit it to 2 per seat. They're gonna have masks on the bus. And asking parents if possible to self-transport, their students, which we know isn't the case for many, and just can't be done for many, so.
We are adding a route out of town.
Oh, yeah. We're adding a town route, which will take 50 to 60 kids off of the buses and just be on the town route bus. So, having Bo Osmanrud has accepted, I offered him a contract to do a bus route. He's gonna be doing the in-town route to alleviate some of the stress of numbers off of the other buses onto a town route bus. Food service is also tricky. We've been meeting with Mrs. Kobernick to identify moving from self-serve to now serving, which this can be a staffing issue, so we've been working through that. So all staff members, food service will be serving the kids rather than the kids grabbing a communal spoon to serve their peaches onto their tray. So it'll be all serving to the kids. Also put a plexiglass down there, plexiglass around the scanner area, the button area, and then we also have the handheld scanner, so kids will just scan their own cards rather than touch the buttons. We're doing the scan cards with grades 4th through 12th, or is it 6th? Mr. Peterson, sorry to drop that on here, I can't remember.
We're going to try it 4th through 6th.
4th through 6th, okay.
So it's gonna be really important for families to know that those kids have to have their cards with them every day.
They can
Buy the
still-
next thing
yeah.
or whatever to get.
If for some reason they lose it, they can still tell the lunch checkout person their number, and that person will type it in.
And they shouldn't need to leave the school at all. I think at the elementary, it'll just be managing them, keeping them in their desks, or keeping them at school. We'll see. We're gonna give it a try and see how it goes.
All right. Junior Warriors, we're gonna, obviously it'll remain open in operation. Do more cleaning down there, and when school is closed, then the Junior Warriors will be closed as well. Okay, traditional classroom learning. We're gonna have most of this stuff is stuff that we talked about as far as inside the classroom and what we're doing. Trying to make sure everything stays clean. So remote learning or distance learning, this is going to be the short-term closures, and like I said, the rigor and the level of instruction will. The expectations that it remains the same as when they're in the building as if we're out of the building in a short-term closure, and working through. Actually, Ms. Meyer's helping assist with that that handbook and the expectations within that handbook that everybody will have on the first day of school. Grading will also, remain the same. During the closure period, it was such a fast closure period last year that we had 2 days, and we did the best that we could, but the reality was it was, the rigor wasn't as high as we would have liked, and the grading, we exempted all kids from the grading process just because we didn't feel like we could. We had ground to stand on to hold anybody to hold kids accountable for the grading period, but this will be different. We know that it's coming, we're aware of it, so the expectations will be that everybody's graded. Special education, we're working through that as well, as far as, that'll all be done within the context of the IEPs and the 504 plans. The social emotional piece is also one of those things, that you weigh the pros and the cons, and what does the child or student need most, and we're going to be working through that. The counselors, will be identifying kids that will need assistance from day one, and then identify individuals that, will need frequent communication with them in the event that we do have a short-term closure. So moving between the models, this is one of those things that, almost going to cross that bridge when we get there. We don't know what we're going to be dealing with. We're anticipating a day or two, maybe 3 to 5 at the most, kind of closure, and then kind of bouncing between the remote distance learning and the traditional classroom learning. And kind of working through that, and the communication, I think, is going to be key with the families and communicating what the plan is. Like I said, the county has asked that we use the templates that they are using as far as those communication pieces. Co-curricular activities, we're going to be continuing to follow the WIA guidance with all the WIA affiliated sports and activities. Anything that's the clubs and activities, we'll be doing the same guidance, using the same type of guidance, but there might be some more flexibility since those kids are our kids in this district and there's not as much movement. We'll most likely we want to offer as much as we can. So with that said, we might be offering our clubs, but there might be limited travel or no travel at all with those. Like FCCLA, for example, might not be participating in any of the events if they are even on. I know FCCLA has kind of moved towards virtual. Just my own daughter has been participating in those. But for those activities, whether it's art club or FFA, we will be doing them for sure in district, and then case by case basis, looking at what the movement is outside of the district. At this point, the facilities uses is just people can request to use the facilities, but I don't see any scenario where we are approving our building and grounds for outside use at this time. And then all the different references and links. Thoughts, questions, talk through what you guys feel with the plan. So the main thing, the hot topic, is the masks. Right now, our initial plan was to encourage them. Then it moved to the Governor Evers' order to require them, and I'm talking students. So then that'll all be dictated by the mandates and the orders from the state. The staff, regardless of the order, will all be required to wear them until further notice, regardless of what the order is.
Choir?
Yeah.
Are we gonna have choir?
We are. Band and choir have been, they met today. There's been different guidance put out there at the lower levels, moving more towards, rhythm, beat, movement, no singing. At the upper level, we talked about, if there's the ability to sing and we can move the kids into the gym for a period, we'll allow that. If the weather is now nice and they go outside, we can do that. We've talked about moving it, possibly incorporating more music theory into the class and limit the days of actual singing. Those are all kind of things that we've been tossing around. I don't know if there's really an answer yet for that. I don't know if either of you guys have any more on that. I feel like it's a little bit easier at the lower levels because the ability to use the handheld instruments and not sing is a lot more conducive to the elementary age kids than it is the high school, junior and senior high kids. So.
And rather than using risers, moving chairs into the classroom and spreading people out, they might be singing by sections rather than the whole choir, and then have one day where they pull them together in a bigger space.
Then my last question is, how the feel of the teachers, are they thinking, okay, we got this? Or are they pretty apprehensive, or I don't know, what's the vibe on how they're feeling?
I'd say it's a broad range. I think people have lots of different things, like Mr. Ernst said before. But I think, the people that have been participating in the meetings, at least, that I've seen, we had half the building there practically or more. And, I think it was a lot of questions and stuff, but it was a very can-do attitude, I guess, and problem-solving attitude. And
Well, I think they're very flexible, knowing that this is a daily changing thing, and we're laying groundwork to try to cope with what comes, but at any time it could change. And for people who are kind of done the same thing for many years, that's a little apprehension for them, but they're working with us well.
And I'll let Ms. Meyer speak to this too, but before she goes, I feel like from my end, I kind of use this term with Mr. Rosine with the sports, and I don't mean this about the teachers, but I think in general, the emails and stuff that I've been receiving, I feel like we're all we're broken of the virus. Like we're just kind of all like, we've processed it, we know it's here, we know what we're dealing with. I don't feel like anybody is viewing this as a district level issue. I think everybody is understanding that there's parts of this plan that I don't like, that you don't like, that nobody wants to wear a mask. Like I feel like we're at that point where it kind of is what it is. Like we know that we all don't like it, but we also know that we have to do it. I know the meetings that I've been a part of, everybody's been very positive, joking with what types of masks and stuff they've been wearing. But I'll let Ms. Meyer speak to, maybe as a better pulse of the staff overall. But I think there's a variety of emotions, a variety of where people are at feeling with the virus itself, and a mixture of, where everybody's at as far as starting in the fall.
I agree, there's, staff are all over the board. You have some that don't want to come back, you have some that are ready, but majority of the staff is ready to go. We're here for the kids, and we're here to make that experience as good as we can for them, So we have to get over what we're afraid of to help them for what they're afraid of, Majority is ready to go. It's not gonna look the same, but we're gonna make it as close as cool as possible.
So are we gonna have an offensive mask policy, kind of like t-shirts? 'Cause you don't know what people are gonna come in with.
No, I think
I'm just
anything
thinking-
that.
I'm just thinking somebody's gonna be kind of funny about it.
Well,
Yeah.
the dress code applies,
Okay.
So
Anything that would be.
For t-shirts apply to masks.
just like any other article, talk about that.
What if we have certain teachers that are nervous about getting it and don't want to? Can they require their class to mask?
They can't. If they have a documented disability, then we're obligated to provide accommodations for those individuals, and that would look different depending on the disability.
I was just watching on the news, Eau Claire, everybody that goes into a public school in Eau Claire has to have a mask on. Doesn't matter how old you are or anything, or there is some ways to get around it, like, it's hard to do it, you have to have a doctor's excuse. And their big thing was, there was teachers that said, what if I just say I don't wanna come into work, because I'm scared?
Yeah, I mean, they definitely could do that, but then they would be on unpaid leave. I mean, then they wouldn't be,
Because before there was something they could, it'd be like, well, get laid off, but, I mean, they wouldn't be getting paid. But is that the only thing? I mean, there's, I think, people that are seriously nervous about getting it.
yeah.
I think they've basically called us essential employees now.
And the
Well,
attorneys,
but nobody's forced to go to work,
Right.
but you just stay home then?
There's usually a consequence when you don't show up to work, though.
yeah,
I mean,
and so,
Right, but
There's-
with this, I mean, there was people at the grocery store that didn't feel like they wanted to go to work, but they weren't released, but I don't think they got.
Yeah, I think there was something early on with that in March or whatever, where, I don't know about the pay thing though, I don't,
It's like a voluntary furlough.
Yeah, like a
Yeah.
furlough, they would get furloughed, but I don't know.
Yeah, so-
I think that's
But what if we
done.
have two
What
teachers
the
that
attorney
come in
had-
and say,
the attorney shared with me, they say you really, the staff, if they're not comfortable coming back, they have to have a documented disability. The district can accommodate, ask for those accommodations, ask for that documented disability, ask for what the accommodations they need. And if you still can't come up to an agreement, the recommendation from the attorney is to provide, like a 6-month unpaid, he said you can't do it indefinitely, it's not fair to the district, but a certain amount of months of unpaid leave that they're on, and then you'd have to, find someone to, long-term sub for that position.
okay.
So that's what we've been told for, as far as employer, it's not, you can't just say you don't feel comfortable coming back to work.
Right.
You have to have something documented, and it has to qualify as a disability under ADA. And then you work through the accommodations, and obviously if someone has that, or even if they don't, I mean, we'd try to accommodate anybody if they were feeling nervous, and they, if there were certain things that we felt like we could implement in their classroom to help them out, we'd certainly do that, even if they didn't have a documented disability. But as far as like, as far as a leave of absence, at the request of the staff, we'd work through that with that individual as well. Does that answer
Yeah.
your question? Okay. But it wouldn't be like a furlough, or it would be like a laid off. It'd be, I don't know what I'd have to ask the attorney that I had talked to.
6-month unpaid vacation.
Yeah.
It's
kinda.
kind of titled as a leave of absence, because you wouldn't qualify for unemployment or anything like that.
Yeah. And to have a blanket I'd be very nervous to have a blanket statement that everyone is required to wear a mask. I mean, there's certain population of students, that I don't think it's appropriate to have a mask on. If they have, I've seen students that are on feeding tubes and have respiratory
Right.
issues, and but those situations will work on an individual basis as far as, and how we deal with the students is different than how we deal with the staff. I mean, the student side of things, we'll be working with the parents, and the staff will be working with the individual. Any other questions to the plan?
Sounds like a good plan.
That's good. It's a plan.
Yeah.
You hit the first target, but we don't have the target moves.
All right, so should we move on then to the handbooks, or?
Sure. Let's.
Okay.
Do you have to approve it first?
Need approval.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
District reopening plan? All right, then I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve the district reopening plan.
Second.
Been properly moved and seconded to approve the district reopening plan. All in favor, signify by saying aye. All opposed? Motion passes. Next item of business is the elementary student handbook.
All right, I can make this quick. So, if you find it in your packet there's a copy in there. The student parent handbook really has no revisions to it, other than, I just updated the names and dates, personnel and dates. And then what we did too, so if you open up behind the cover sheet, there's a page of important dates, and just added in there a statement, special note for 2020 and 2021. Basically saying that specific policies or procedures in this handbook might be overridden by the existence of temporary plans. In other words, the ones we just approved, or the building plans that we're still finalizing, that basically, for this school year, there's gonna be procedures and policies in those plans that override what we have written here, rather than revise our entire handbook, which would be silly, for 1 year hopefully, and change all our policies basically. We're saying refer to the plan, and if there's any spots where there's in conflict, the plan is what rules what's happening. So, but other than that, there are no policy changes or procedural changes in the student parent handbook. So it's the same.
Chris, just a little thing, I think we had talked about it before. Is it really, and it might be the same for high school, is it really see-through bottles, or are we not following that? Because it says see-through, and is that what we're gonna say?
for the water
Especially
bottles?
with everybody bringing bottles this year. Is that gonna be really see-through or not see-through?
When you say see-through, is it like white?
Because a lot of us have the Warrior ones now that are good ones that you can't see through that keep your water cold.
Yeah.
So what's it gonna be?
I would say we really don't enforce that.
Said
So
encourage.
let's just take it out then? They'd say it's water, but doesn't have to be see-through?
Yeah. I think we've done, it used to be clear, change it to see-through. I mean, we've tried to adhere to the see-through, they might be tinted green or blue or whatever.
Right.
Can I say with 100% certainty that it's been followed in every room? I don't know, I can't say that for sure, but I guess,
I just try to be consistent, my family, with what the handbook says.
right.
So if we're gonna say it, let's really say it, or is it easy just to take out so they can keep the ones that keep it colder,
Right.
There's typically a reason for the see-through, especially at the high school
To make sure it's
level.
water, right.
Well, yeah, to make sure it's water, and even, and I know, think about controlled substances, but even if
Yeah.
there's things like soda and Gatorade and stuff, we're trying to keep out of the room, so that's where it goes back to. But,
And as far as colder, you're basically talking a classroom passing time, they can refill at each class
Right.
period or whatever, it's bottle filler, and that's chilled.
so,
I don't know.
It's just a thought, my girls had brought up, Mom, everybody else has these, I'm like, no, we're following what the handbook says, and it says see-through.
yeah,
So, just a little thing, but
yep. No, it's come up before, so.
I'm not sure what high school says.
Similar.
All right, if there's no more questions, I will entertain a motion.
I move to approve the elementary student handbook.
Second.
It's been properly moved and second to approve the elementary student handbook for 2020-21. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed. Motion passes. The next item on our agenda is the elementary staff handbook.
And again, this is just, it's not, the employment handbook, it's just the operational handbook that we have for staff. And same thing, there's no changes in terms of policies or procedures other than, I did put that kind of statement on the front cover again, just stating that there's going to be procedures that are overridden by the return to school plan. Other than that, the only changes that were made inside of it were personnel and dates. Things like that, so.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
Wait, how is elementary staff different from support staff? Can you tell me who falls into those?
No, well, I guess when I say staff, I mean support staff and teachers. When I say faculty, I mean
Here,
teachers.
There's just two handbooks here. One's an elementary staff and one's a support staff handbook.
That's the employment.
Those are the
handbook that
employee
is gonna-
handbooks. Those are next.
Oh,
On the
that's it.
agenda, yeah, so that's the district employment handbook.
It's kind of like.
Oh, so there's staff and then there's employee handbook.
Yeah, this is, and actually, maybe on the agenda, we could have just said building handbook, and elementary building handbook, I suppose, to clarify. But yeah, so this is just the operations handbook saying, here's when we have meetings, here's how you take attendance, here's, when you turn your grades in, things like that. The next item on there, that's Mr. Ernst will cover, that's the employment handbook, like your contract handbook for the
Okay.
support staff, yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, this is just operations.
So we're on the elementary staff handbook, then I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve the elementary staff handbook.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded to approve the elementary staff handbook. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion passes. The next item of business is our teacher employee handbook.
Okay, so this is the teacher, pretty much like the contract. So this will, all the changes in this one, we just have the date changes, but then this will need to be approved with the addendum to the handbook, the COVID response addendum. And you'll see in the table of contents, I just added the pandemic protocol procedures appendix A.
All right, so if there is no discussion, I will entertain a motion.
Move to approve the employee teacher handbook.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded to approve our 2020-21 teacher employee handbook. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion passes. The next item of business is our support staff employee handbook.
So same thing as the teacher handbook, just the dates changed, but then the appendix, pandemic appendix was added to it.
Okay, is there any discussion? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion.
I move to approve the support staff employee handbook.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded to approve our 2020-21 support staff employee handbook. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion passes. The next item of business is the approval of our 2021 transportation handbook.
Okay, so this one specific to our bus drivers. They have their separate handbook, and that does have some changes in it.
Just an FYI, they also get the support staff employment handbook also.
Oh, okay.
They fall under that.
Oh, yeah, so we don't need the appendix in there, I'm sorry. But there was some changes in it anyway, so it'll be approved. Switched up the job descriptions to better reflect those, so there's some new ones in there, and then added, so the first, right after the mission and core values, the job description page and the job requirements and responsibilities were updated and added to. So those two pages are new, and then the very last page added some verbiage regarding the precautions and what their requirements are. Just added it in there as far as what's going to be taking place. Required to wear face masks, and then the self-monitoring for the following, the COVID symptoms. Then there's also going to be some procedures implemented this year, just some more cleaning within the buses before and after each route. And that will be talked about on this Friday during the transportation department meeting.
Josh, I see there's a seniority list in this handbook. What does that pertain to? What, does seniority mean anything amongst them anymore?
Not really. I mean, it used to be what they used to identify who was taking what trips, co-curricular, extracurricular trips, and that's not the case anymore. Now it's put it in there just to show who, how long everybody's been in the district, and it was in the previous handbook, so I left it in there just to reflect that. But right now with the co-curriculars, because of the increase of the number of sports and the distance of travel, like it's been, we put out a calendar, have people sign up, and it's determined that way, not seniority.
Okay, well, I will entertain a motion if there's no
I'm-
discussion.
Move to approve the transportation handbook.
Second.
Been properly moved and seconded to approve the 2020-21 transportation handbook. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Alright,
All opposed? Motion passes. Next item of business is the approval of virtual learning coordinator position.
Okay, so this one, due to the fact that we don't really know what we're gonna be dealing with, I threw this on there to just ask for board approval, or at least consideration to discuss, what we wanna do with that position, because we know that we need someone overseeing it, but we don't know what that will look like, and, if it's gonna be a full-time position, a part-time position, and we won't be able to make that, won't be able to make that decision until, all the numbers are in and we know exactly how many kids that we have enrolled in that option. So I guess what I'm requesting is just the approval of a position, and then we would bring, whatever that looks like once we get closer to the beginning of the year, that it would eventually need to be board approved. And what I could do is just communicate with you guys through email once we get closer to that, once we feel like we have a better understanding of what that looks like, and then through email if there's discrepancies as far as what you guys are comfortable with as a whole, then we can wait till it's approved, or if you guys give me the green light through email, we can move forward with a application and interview and that process.
We see this being a temporary position then?
I think so. I don't see it being a long, I think we'll continue to have students enrolled in a virtual option, but right now, I don't think we'll have 10% of our district every year. I think we'll have, my guess is that we'll have 50 to 60 kids sign up, and then I think that, once families realize that it's gonna be a lot of work, and it really takes a certain type of student, and then also families need to be able to be present and work with their children with that. I think we might have some kids back out and, want to be in person. So I get that's the part where we're really not sure what we're dealing with yet as far as that role. And I don't see it being like a long-term, every year thing. But I could be wrong. I don't know if you guys have any opinion on that.
Know that it's not, like in the past, at the high school, when you have kids taking onesie, twosie classes, the counselors kind of coordinated. And then right now, like the counselors have kind of helped with getting it started and onboarding kids. But I think, it's going to reach a point where it's too much for them to add, so that we're just trying to, it's not, we know that if you've looked at the materials, there's going to be, the virtual learning runs itself basically, but there needs to be someone to help onboard the kids, onboard families, be that liaison between the family and the virtual learning in the school. And, it's just gonna take some level of oversight. We just don't know what it's gonna be yet.
And
It's not really
the end of terms will be really busy bringing kids in, and then getting grades into Skyward from the platform that they're in, from the Ingenuity platform, and marking down credits and all that kind of stuff. There's gonna be some management on the ends. The middle should be, for the most part, pretty self-sustained.
And then, once this pandemic ends, at some point, we might just have singletons, and then it might fall on the counselors again to do that. But at this point, we know that it's gonna be too big for the counselors to take on. So that's where I threw it on there, just because it'd be nice to have the ability to start that process before, rather than waiting for the next board meeting if we're at that point at that time.
I'd say go ahead and hire someone if you feel the need.
Is that an official motion?
You want a motion?
Sure, yeah, please.
I move to hire a virtual learning coordinator position.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded to approve the virtual learning coordinator position. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Next item of business is a resignation.
Okay, unfortunately, we have a letter of resignation, the last document that I shared with you. Brianna Larson, 6th grade teacher, took a job in a district closer to where her husband works. She's been exploring that for a while and was able to secure a job over in a district over there. So wish her the best of luck. She'll be a big loss and big shoes to fill because she's a great teacher.
I move to approve the resignation.
Second.
Been properly moved and seconded to approve the resignation of Brianna Larson. Many thanks. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Next item of business is the approval of a hire.
Okay, so we have .5 FTE JK elementary teacher Rosemary Spinell. She's taught multiple years summer school here, and I'll let Mr. Peterson
Yeah,
speak
she's
to the
actually-
interview process.
Yeah, she's actually retired from another district. She taught 27 years doing early childhood special ed and junior kindergarten 4K in the past, and retired. And but that definitely feels like she's still got more to give and is interested, likes the idea of the halftime, and was really intrigued by it. So really kind of a great fit, great opportunity.
What's her name?
Rosemary Spinell.
All right, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve the new hire.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded to approve Rosemary Spinell. All in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed? Motion passes. Next item of business are our superintendent notes. Dr. Joshua Ernst.
Okay, I don't have any more to share. We've been talking quite a bit, so.
All right, well then we'll move on to the next item of business, our contemplated closed session in accordance to WSS 19.85.
Don't
paragraph
forget
See you,
about
Marcy.
the meeting, or
Yes.
please.
Oh, I thought you said union meeting. I'm like, what?
Yes.
They killed a lot of trees.
You either.
Thanks, you guys. Paragraph 1C, considering employment, compensation, or performance data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility. We will review employee compensation performance. I'll pull the board. Denny?
Yes.
Skip?
Yep.
Christie?
Yep.
Yep.
And myself, yes. We are in closed session.
Good.
All right, let's return to open session then. Next item of business is the future agenda items.
So
Do you
we-
have anything they want to?
No, the next meeting we have will be the annual meeting. We will have some items that we normally don't have on the annual meeting, and on the annual meeting to be board approved. Some potentially student handbook at the junior senior high,
Building handbook.
I'm sorry, building handbook at the junior senior high, and possibly the distance learning kind of expectations for students and staff that might be on there. And maybe building level plans, right? Is that what I just said? Yeah. No. Handbook, yeah, I'm sorry, and then
You're
both
right.
building level.
And you said the 24th was the annual meeting?
Yep.
Any applicants for that teacher position?
A few, yeah.
What time, Josh? Annual meeting.
7 p.m.
I'll text you.
Would we do
Yeah, well-
a special meeting beforehand for the other stuff then, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
6:30
scratch
then?
that.
We do,
6. Just to be safe.
I
Well, we have to
don't-
go through building level plans.
I don't think more than 6:30, do you guys?
6:30.
Well, for the building plan, it's just updating dates. So it's-
Well,
it's just
no, the
tonight.
building level plan, I mean, unless you guys wanna hear, like, literally everything that's in place for at the building level for,
Right. I meant my building handbook. It's
yep,
just-
the handbook will be quick, but then we're gonna go over the 2 building level plans for, in response to COVID.
But I think if you have it ahead of time, and have a
Yeah,
chance to
give it
look
to
at
us
it,
ahead
just
of
come
time,
with just your
yeah.
questions, I mean,
Yeah.
All right, 6:30 then. Okay. I'll entertain a motion.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded that we adjourn. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. We are adjourned.